Hello beautiful starseeds, my name is Ashtara Mission to bring you some of the highest frequency content. Welcome to Starseed Energetics, and this is going to be your August reading. So before I start the reading, I would like to remind you that this is a frequency transmission more than any rational explanation of any energies, and just to kind of let you know that I'm not a traditional tarot reader that is predicting anything. I'm just reading the archetypal energies in the collective field of whoever's watching my channel, and then I'm just giving you solid practical advice and how to deal with whatever you're going through right now. And all of these energetic patterns will have a different kind of reflection in your life depending on who you are, but the general archetypal pattern is similar because you are attuning to this video. And whether you like what I'm saying or not, if you find yourself just watching my content, it's probably because you are getting some sort of energetic activation from these videos, and that is what I do. So if you like my transmission styles or energetic work, you can check out my Patreon, and let's get started with your reading. I'm going to ask you to tune into your heart space, ground your energy. Just remember that you're on this planet Earth, and also attuning to your cosmic energy, remembering that you're more than your physical experience. And I've pulled out one theme card, and just to let you know some interesting advancements that have been happening in my own journey is that as like a reader, I've been reading tarot cards for years, and I've never really stuck to this traditional way of reading tarot cards. I mean, I learned it basically myself, and I don't really read like most other readers do. And I've always done this thing where I read algorithmic patterns behind people's energy and then giving practical advice, but I'm more and more being guided to a strange path where I'm using less cards, even though I really love them. And I think that the reason can be multi-leveled, but I'm just following the guidance as I go. I mean, I could always read the energy without the cards, but I enjoy pulling the cards because it gives us some sort of an agreed upon symbol to look at. I'm still going to use them, but just please note if I'm not like showing you the cards as much as I used to, which I actually used to never really show the cards too much, but then some people commenting that they would like to see the cards. So let's see how it goes, but I may start reading without much cards, but I still have all of them here. And I mean, I'm getting always like telepathic downloads aside from the cards, and that's how I always read before too, but it might just be less visual. But I just hope that you enjoy the frequencies of the transmission itself. So the theme card, okay, before I start with the theme card, the overall message that I was getting for you just telepathically, or just getting the insights from the invisible guidance that is running the show, essentially this month, or just for the next few weeks, basically, whenever you find this video, because these are timeless and they've always been timeless, is this, I'm tuning into a lot of people's sense of anxiety, and whether you have anxiety or not, and it's a very commonly misused term of having anxiety, and people tend to like, it's a whole cult around mental illness and emotional instability. Is like this whole thing that people promote, right? Like YouTubers and SoundCloud rappers and stuff, they're always talking about it. But the interesting thing is some of the victims of this instability or unbalance, they actually have no idea that they have anxiety, because it's such like an underlying background sound of their frequency, so they don't really know. So it might be the case that some people realize just how anxious they are. And you know, when people start to meditate and they realize that they have so many thoughts more than usual, or they have so many more overwhelming emotions as usual, it's not that meditation is provoking those emotions and thoughts. It's not that you just automatically sit still and then all of a sudden you have more mental chatter, or that you have more emotional purging because now you're, I mean, that could be energetically true, that when you refine your frequency, things come up, but at the same time, it's just that you always have those running in your mind, you always have those resonating in your emotional field, and you're just happening to actually pay attention to what's happening. Most people, they just don't even realize they have this background white noise of all this like emotions and chatter going on. So when you sit down to meditate, it's not like you automatically magically get more thoughts and emotions. It's just you're starting to pay attention to what your experience is. And so for a lot of people, I feel like they're really stepping into a more observant place in their reality, where they're truly automatically reflecting inwards whenever something is happening. And I mean, at this point of your journey, when you're watching this, you're definitely years and years into reflecting inwards whenever something happens. Like even within a relationship, not just looking at the relationship and what the other person is doing, but it's like, where's the trigger coming from? Where are the historical patterns of energetic conditioning that I'm getting so triggered with this type of event? What am I labeling? And that's another thing that I really want to mention is just, I'm sure that's, I know that some people already are doing this, but maybe you just need a little bit of an external articulation of what is happening. Is people tend to really try to categorize and label the cause of them feeling a certain way or them having a certain trigger. It's like, oh, this event happened today, so that's why I'm experiencing this emotion, or that person is acting in this way, they have all these problems, and that's why, as a person who's having a relationship with this person, I am not happy or I'm unsatisfied. But you need to step away from all of that labeling and blaming and trying to look for causes, and realize that the cause and effect are simultaneous. As I say, there's not really a circumstance around you if you look at it from an abstract perspective. It's just that you have this energetic patterning or looping that happens once every cycle. However that much that cycle repeats itself, whether it's every couple of weeks or every few days or maybe even every day. And then that energetic pattern just repeats itself, and then you either manifest that person doing something right prior to that cycle happening, and so you can actually blame the situation or circumstance or the person. So it's really about tuning into the patterns themselves and not paying attention to what the cause is or what the problem really is, and having a very neutral perspective throughout these cycles so that you can change it. You can change it once you get to that level of observing and identifying itself is, say, 60% of the work, and the rest just kind of unfolds naturally unless you're resisting that reality. And this is another huge message coming through for you at this time, is there's an emotional spectrum, and regardless of how much you work on, say, your anxiety levels or fear levels, as long as you're embodied in the human experience, you're always gonna have somewhat of an access to every emotion that you don't desire to have. And most likely those patterns are gonna persist throughout your life, even if you, say, purge out. And you don't have to take this quite literally, like, and this is only true from somewhat of a perspective. What I'm saying, it's not 100% truth. It's just, say, like, it's 80% relative truth or like 40% relative truth, depending on where you're tuning in from and what state of consciousness you're tuning in from. But you're always gonna have that reference point to those emotions, no matter how much you've purged and worked on something. Say you have abandonment issues from when you were a child, and then that would stem back to multiple parallel dimensions that you can't even trace, and then say you really worked on it through emotional freedom, emotional code, whatever it is that you've done, or past life regression, to resolve that emotion, and you're like confident, like, I really don't have that anymore. But then someone does something and it triggers you in that way, and like you are just so triggered beyond measure. It's because your experience of anything at all is in reference, or it's in relevancy to your state of container. So say that previously you had this much trapped emotion when it comes to abandonment and or like rejection, which is like somewhat intertwined, and then you like purge it out, so all you have left is like this much. But then your consciousness now is at such a used to state of prolonged peace, but then this much shows up. It's literally gonna feel like where before you were, when you were much denser, you were dealing with this much. It's gonna feel just as sensational. It's kind of like if you do like a substance all the time, and say you have a substance abuse problem, I mean, I hope you don't, but I'm just using this as an example because it's easy to understand in this way, then doing that substance a lot is gonna equate to somebody who never does it doing a little bit. So the key here, until as a whole morphogenetic field, the entire human construct evolves, you're always going to have somewhat of a reference to different emotional triggers. And that's quite a gift because it's a huge calibration tool to align yourself back to neutrality, which you're based from. What you're going to need to try to do is really just accept that these emotional states or these extremely unfavorable energetic vibrational frequencies are always gonna be part of your life's experience, and I'm saying that carefully, and it shouldn't be taken with such an attachment to like, this needs to be not part of my reality, or it, when you really establish a sense of observing neutrality, that will actually really amplify like the levels of experience that you can really tolerate. So the actual issue is not with lower states of being. The actual issues is not actually with like fear or anxiety or depression or anything like that. Those are just experiences, but the real issue is when people resist it and when people are averse to it. Like if you've ever been to those Vipassana retreats, they teach about that. Like there's a samskara, and then there's like layers and layers of karma associated with that, depending on how much resistance the person has to that experience itself. If you actually just plainly experience the emotion or the situation without being so like resistant to it, like I really don't like this experience, I need this to change. Like for example, if you're experiencing anxiety, that anxiety is just a sensation on multiple levels, like on energetic levels, like 4 body levels or 3 body levels. But then when you start to really refuse that experience, or like I really don't like this can't be part of my experience, and you just go into this denial mode, it actually creates a problem. It creates hooks, and it creates like a multiplying of that energy. So it's just about observing those levels. And it's also same goes for if you're struggling with habit patterns or behaviors or qualities of your life that you're having a really difficult time letting go or transmuting or transfiguring that situation. It's often because there's a level of judgment or guilt or shame around that. So the actual issue is not, for example, if you have an issue with like overeating or not exercising or something that you just don't like that you need to change, or like if you're a smoker, if you're doing something that you just don't feel like it should be a part of your life, the actual issue is that you're judging yourself so much for it. That's like an even bigger issue than the actual problem, that you're judging so much, like this can't be part of my life, like, and you just go into this mode of complete resistance, and then that creates a problem that you can just simply probably change really easily if you weren't so judgmental about yourself about that. So these are some of the things. And the final thing I would like to say is that when it comes to anxiety, a lot of people feel as if it's something that is going to contribute to the resolution of an issue, or the worry or the judgment can actually somehow contribute to resolving an issue, but that is not the case. Like it is just a brief moment of figuring out, like cognitively making sense of the patterns that are happening, but it shouldn't be a prolonged state. So your brain tends to kind of link up the moments where you were anxious and then you eventually found a solution to something, and then your brain will make this false association that, okay, I was anxious or worried about something, I was judgmental about something, and then I ended up finding a solution. So your brain will be like, okay, anxiety, worry, fear, and judgment will lead to a solution, but that's just not a correlative connection. The anxiety was there, but then what actually came to a resolution was a series of synchronicities, timing, universal flow, and you taking action, not the actual worrying part. It would just happen to be a part of that. It's like if I can explain this simply, if your brain was, I mean, your mind is a programming mechanism that a lot of it is based on like what in technology they would call this dumb networks. So for example, the internet is a dumb network because it's very neutral to any information. It doesn't judge. So it just takes the input and like it creates a connection. But so it's as if you just witnessed one day that you wore a red hat and then it stopped raining. So say that you putting on the red hat was like the act of being anxious, and then you realize that, oh, it stopped raining. So it's like you just always make this association with like, okay, if I put on the red hat, it'll stop raining. Like, no, it's just a false coincidental, like it's just a false connection to the reality of things. So the oracle card that I pulled for you was She Rests to Create. This talks about your use of your life force. If you're watching this, chances are that you're being called into a way of being, or you're called into a state of creation or evolution, which is actually not coming from your personal will, but this is actually like something that is just inherently part of your life. It's, I would say it's like this wheel of fortune energy where it's like things are turning, the world is evolving, the entire universe is evolving, and this is the time in which you're called to like activate in a certain way. It's kind of like when you hit a certain age, you hit puberty. This is like for your soul right now and your mental and emotional bodies, like evolving into another state, your spiritual body evolving into another state, your physical body evolving, all of your levels of your bodies evolving into another state, because it's that time. And there's not a certain way of making sense of this evolution. It's nothing to do with, I mean, perhaps it has some correlation with planetary movements and your actual life cycles on Earth as this incarnation, but more so it's about this macrocosmic cycle beyond this like solar system that are shifting. I mean, sure, you can credit this to the solar kind of evolution in the plasmic light, whatever, is it's just an excuse for actually what's happening is just pure evolution, and you're stepping into another level of being, like you're being called to create a lot more. And if you were to traditionally carry on your cognitive imprints on how you perceive reality, how you interact with reality, it's just not kind of viable to match like your current life circumstance with what you're being called to step into. But at the same time, I feel that you're very easy with that. Like you're okay with feeling like you don't know how it's gonna happen, because you basically really know that you don't need to know how it's gonna happen. It's just gonna happen. I mean, you've had plenty of experiences in your life where you didn't exactly need to know how you were gonna do something, but this is not just some sort of like a simple manifestation in a certain area of your life or finding an alignment with a career. It's like way more than that. It's really about embodying another level of making sense of reality as a whole. And so the things that you're being called to actually do and create, which is a very, I guess, relevant expression of your evolution internally, is you will be prompted to create and be of service, which is just one facet of how your evolution expresses itself. Is you don't just evolve internally. When you evolve internally, it naturally alters the way in which you show up in this external reality, in this holographic projection. And so you're getting all these insights, you're getting all these ways of being that you actually are starting to embody in yourself, that it's really about working smarter and not harder. And first and foremost, I feel that you're having a period of time where all of the things that you thought were needed to do things and create things are being challenged energetically, that you were at a standstill almost, and you may have been doing this for a while, just be at a standstill mode, not really knowing why. And of course there could be many different explanations, but explanations are always just a facade. There's not really a cause and effect to this, as I said. And you are just awakening to this new way of being, of having a new fertile ground, or it's like you have a brand new soil. So say that your mindset is, say, the soil and the environment of when you're farming something or when you're planting a seed, and up until this point in your life you've always had the same like set of environment, the same kind of soil, the same kind of weather, and then so you're accustomed to a process of agriculture, so to speak, in a certain way. But right now, like, you're shifting into a whole other environment with different soil, different liquid precipitation, different air quality, like that is literally like for otherworldly. And so all of these strategies that you had, it just doesn't apply to this next level, but you're just allowing yourself to calibrate, and it's not something you have to actively chase and figure out. It just comes to you. And you might, when you get to this space, you may just end up watching your human self sometimes really do take the action and go strive for something and go make the goal happen and go make the plans. But it comes from a very different space of like, you literally are sitting like at a still standpoint and witnessing and observing, and you're not making any striving effort, like just forcing something, but it's from a place where you just literally seeing that, okay, before you take that action or make that decision or create this project, you have this strange sense of calibration of your energetic field and mindset that whatever arises is effortless. So it's not like you actually strive to go do anything, but this is just a part of it. And then there's this whole other part where you are really just at a standstill and allowing everything to process from a level of field that is just beyond whatever you always thought was your default experience, but you're tuning more and more into a higher level of experience. If you're part of my Patreon, this is like a very extensive addition to the transmission that came through a few days ago. So I hope it does help. Let me just go into the meaning of this card. Yeah, so this is also really about creating peace and creating a peaceful environment, also just on a physical level as well. And this isn't something, again, that you're gonna have to try to do. It'll naturally happen. People will naturally weed itself out. Things and habits will naturally weed themselves out as you really drop away from the resistance. And this is key, as you really drop away from the judgment, guilt, blame, and shame about any situation or involvement with people or habit patterns. And then things naturally will either dissolve or evolve. So this isn't the set of conditioning that you've had up until this point, but you're getting used to a new level of metaphysical power, basically. I do feel like that was the core essence of the meaning, but just for the sake of these cards, I will read a couple more. So you have the Seven of Swords, Four of Wands, and the Queen of Wands. So you're really basically grounding firmly into this level of inner peace and stability and this attractiveness, and being able to really step into the, I guess, for example, the identity of the person you want to become, instead of chasing after little traits and beating around the bush of the person or the being that you are meant to become. And so like previously you might have thought like, okay, the person I want to exist as has, for example, this amount of income, this kind of relationship, this kind of house, and you were chasing after the little fragments of what you think that person or being has, whereas now you're just vibrating as that being instead of chasing after the things, and everything else just takes care of itself. But here's the deep message that relates all the way back into the beginning, is like, this inner peace and foundation and harmony. You're getting into a deep realization that it doesn't mean you're completely liberated from undesirable experiences. The real gem is not to have any undesirable experiences, but the real gem is to be able to have undesirable experiences yet remain completely at peace with it and not in resistance or judgment or anxiety or fear around it. So that's the true container of your potential. So I really hope that this reading has been helpful. Thank you so much once again for hanging out with me here and chilling here and getting this transmission. I hope that you have an incredible August. It's one of my favorite months in the whole year. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.